Hi everyone, I am so happy to be here, and I'm going to invite my dearest teacher, Kimberly Garner, to join. Sorry, this is the part of doing these lives that really get to me. Okay, hold on. School. Um, Thank you for waiting. Here we go. I just invited her. We'll see when she comes, when she joins. Hi, everyone. Is everyone hot? Hi, Kimberly.
Good to see you.
Too. I was just making small talk with the audience. I'm like, is everybody hot? It seems like
Oh
the
my
whole
God.
planet is hot.
Yeah, totally. Good to see you.
Yeah. What's the temperature in Washington?
Oh my gosh. In my house, it's 85.
Oh my goodness.
I know. I don't know. They say it's going to be 86 today, but the thing is, when it's 86 here, it feels like it's 100 degrees. So
Oh, yeah.
it's brutal.
I know. I know. Well, yeah, we can't go out. There was like I'm in my sister's hometown in Idlewild, and there are these flyers and for people who are walking their dogs, like, just so you know, the temperature of the pavement is, so don't take your
Oh
dogs out.
my
Yeah,
gosh. Well, that's
it's
good
really hot.
because you don't really think about that. Like, if you're not used to it, if you're in Arizona, you probably think about it all the time.
Right. Yeah, we were in Palm Springs just a couple weekends ago, and I mean it was insane. We were like, let's go shopping in 110-degree weather, and there was somebody sitting outside, and their dogs had little sneakers on, like kind of funny, but it's like, oh well, yeah, of course, those poor little
Oh
paws.
my gosh. Well, it looks like we have similar backgrounds. I'm in my daughter's little she shed, and it looks like you're in a cozy, like wood paneled room too.
Yeah, yeah, everything here is made of wood. Yeah, it's really sweet. It's nice. It's great to be up in the mountains and be surrounded by the trees. I know you appreciate that too.
Yeah,
I, you,
for sure. We're in similar environments right now.
yeah. Well, so I entitled this live "Design Your Story" because you and I have had some really interesting conversations around. I mean, and it's all an an integral part of your program, the School of Holistic Interior Design. But you're just talking about how our environments reflect back a storyline, and I like this idea, this kind of metaphor of being the writers of our story, um, in the use of interior design. And I'd love to, maybe if you could share a little bit about how you see that, like in terms of what that feedback loop is, and how design does, how our homes reflect back the stories that we hold and live.
Yeah. So the first thing that I want to share is that when I think of design, like I actually don't consider myself an interior designer anymore because I feel like when people think interior design, it's like an elite sport, right? Like it's this thing that once you've taken care of all of your necessities, then you get the luxury of having someone, do interior design on your space. And so when I think of design, it's how we adapt our space so that it better supports our experience. And that means our experience in our outer life, but it also means the experience in our inner world. And so at this point, I'm just trying to like shift people away from thinking of interior design as something that's separate from the foundation of your overall well-being. And so it's true that our space communicates a story, and it communicates a story about what's going on in our outer life. It communicates a story about our lifestyle and how we live from moment to moment. It speaks to our core values. It speaks to how much our life is in alignment with our values. And it also speaks to the story within our mind. So the story that's sort of on autoplay. And so our home is perpetuating the story that's happening in our life, and it's perpetuating the story that's happening in our mind. And a lot of time, because our subconscious mind takes up such an enormous role, we aren't even aware that our home or our life is perpetuating these stories. And I think that's where our last conversation got really juicy, right? Was that my home is perpetuating something and I'm not even aware of it until now, and I want to change it, right? Is that what you were?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think for me, recently, um, I've had a lot of examples of this just with, observing spaces or in my connections with friends and hearing about what they desire in life and then just seeing what's reflected in their home. Like for example, I have a dear friend who's really wanting to call in partnership, and she's been single for a while, and it's a huge desire for her. And I was in her space and had to walk through her room to use the restroom, and I noticed she has this like gorgeous art everywhere, like beautiful one of a kind pieces. And I started to take note in her bedroom. There's this lovely colorful painting of a horse, and then there's this framed print of a tree, and then there's this huge like chalk drawing of a howling lone wolf. And I took note of it, and then I asked her, I said, what do those things have in common? And she said, well, it's all nature, because she loves nature. And I'm like, yes. And they're all solitary things. There's just one of them. It's a single interpretation of one thing. There's no expression of partnership or or pairs or anything like that. And so it was like an aha moment, when she was like, I did not realize that that's, a storyline that I'm possibly perpetuating through my art. And yeah, it's just interesting. I mean, I think art is one of the easiest ways for us to observe that, right?
Yeah, yeah, and furnishings too. Like if her bed like is clearly for one person, like an example would be like if it's pushed up against the wall and there's only one way for someone to get into bed comfortably, and the other way is for someone to like climb over and get into bed. Or if there's an inequality of nightstands and one person either doesn't have a nightstand or has, a very small one compared to the other person. Like all of those things are basically sending messages.
Yeah. Um, what are some other examples of that? Like, let's say someone wants to, maybe one of their desires is to grow their business,
Mm-hmm.
or like make room for more income. What would be some examples of how one could, shift their space to invite that in?
So for starters, like, so actually our kitchen, on a primal level, our kitchen reflects abundance. So our primal mind, when it sees like coins or food, those are directly reflected to wealth, and abundance. Because if you think about how humans lived, you know, the last 200 years is minute in the span of human existence. And so food is the symbol of wealth. And so what I would first do is take a look at what's going on in the kitchen. And is there a display of abundance? Is there a bowl of fruit? Like, these are just like little simple cues that we would first address. And so that would be where I would start. The other place, and this is not as relevant in like Europe as it is in the US, I would look at the laundry room or the utility room, like the space where we do our laundry, because that tends to be a bottleneck in the house, and it prevents flow, right? And water is a primary element in the laundry room. And so if that area is bottlenecked, and you know, we also, like when I mentioned water, we want to look at the design elements as metaphors for what's going on in our life. And so when there's water, we want there to be flow. We don't want there to be anything stagnant. And so just to start with, and I'm assuming this person doesn't have a home office, right? Because if there is a home office, then we would go there.
Yeah.
But I would start with that in the kitchen and see what's going on.
And maybe Kimberly, on like a more general level, if you're trying to make room for something, or to invite something in, whatever that may be, would you say clutter is like one of the first places to focus on? I mean, I'm just thinking about making space, like literal space, like, you know, removing a, too much furniture or having too much of something around. Um, can send this message of like, there's no room for that. There's no time for this. There's no space for this. Like, what am I doing wanting these things if my environment is so packed, you know?
Yeah, it's and I know that you know this already. So we always start with, what do we want? Like, what do we want? And if people are like, I don't know what I want, like, I don't know, there's too much going on, I don't even know what I
Right.
want,
Right.
then okay, well, what's not working? And then that's always related to what someone wants, right? Like, if the relationship isn't working, then they want to have like more love or more belonging or more connection, or, you know, like, and so that's a good place to start. And then next layer is addressing the things away, make space for more of what we want. And so what's so great about our home, since each room, like in our body, each organ, same in our home, each specific function. And so when we look at what's not working or what we more, we can start in whatever room is related to that area. And like you said, the easiest thing to do is start with getting rid of what isn't working, and whether it's clutter or, you know, I think the thing with clutter is people don't recognize that it's not just a pile of shit. It's not just like a bunch of stuff that, you know, sorry for cussing, that like is broken or whatever. Like, it's whatever doesn't serve our needs, our feelings, or our goals. And so we may be in a room that is beautiful and full of things that have like value, but we don't love them, we don't use them, and they don't support our deeper goals. And so, like you said, like, well, how am I supposed to get rid of things? Like, everything is fullness. Like, we'll just start with that. Like, and
Yeah.
then, and I know you know all of this, but once we start doing this, then all of a sudden, what's inside of us that wants to shine through, it starts to happen. And it's just, you know, our home is like feeding us nutritional content for our senses, which communicates to what's going on within our mind. And so we just want to create these environments that are like for what we want. Like that, sort of took a tangent on that.
No, that was great. I think I'm trying to figure out if it's your Wi-Fi or mine. It's just a little glitchy, but
Oh,
because we're
um,
both in the, that's okay. But I made out most of it. Yeah. No, yeah, and so yeah, I think that's a really good place to start because you're right. A lot of people don't know what they want. And I think, and I know we're sort of redefining design, as we said in the beginning, but part of what I experience as an interior designer is that a lot of people don't know what they want. I mean, they don't know what their style is. They don't know what they like. I mean, maybe for certain things like colors or whatever, or their patterns, but it's hard to pinpoint like what's the feeling that they want to convey in their homes. And I think um, part of how you share in your program the litmus test is to see how your body feels, like really kind of do like a little almost like an inventory or an audit of what you already have and notice what comes up as you're looking at the table lamp that your grandmother gave you or the set of dishes that you got from your wedding, that you're now divorced and it doesn't have the same meaning, or it's it's a really it's a really interesting practice. And the more I get into this work and learn from you and just really dive into what holistic practices are, the more it makes sense to me, like um, just how powerful a tool it is for us, especially in this age of energy and manifestation and all of that. Yeah. Was there anything you want to share about that? About like how manifesting happens at home, or?
well, yeah. So one of the things I want to add is that, when like now, like you and I doing this work of integrating like the mind and the nervous system and consciousness into how we design a space, the authority is really like we act as guides, right? And the real authority comes from our clients. Like we can't do our job without understanding what our client wants. And I think one of the fun things about all of this and how you and I work with space is that like we're already manifesting creatures. Like we're already manifesting all of the time. And for the most part, humanity is not understanding that their home plays a huge role in how we're thinking and how we're feeling and the energy that we're putting out. And what neuroscience and quantum mechanics is telling us is that our feelings and our energy is actually super, super powerful. And so if we can help people understand this language that their home is communicating and this energy that it's perpetuating, then we can help them kind of redirect what's already in place and point it toward what they want. And manifesting just happens to be a byproduct, right?
Mhm.
Like when we align our physical environment, it's going to influence our internal environment. And when our physical environment and our internal environment are aligned with our desires, like we can't help but manifest. Like we're going to manifest whatever's in that direction. And then I think, as you and I know, like a byproduct of that might be some discomfort at first because we're getting so aligned with what we want, those things that aren't in alignment with what we want get much louder, and sometimes things fall apart a little bit before we start seeing like the positive manifestations. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is interesting how it just happens. Like you said, it's a byproduct. It's not so much this like um, intentional, practice. It just kind of because the alignment happens so naturally. That's just how the universe responds, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really, really fascinating. So how would you, I mean, as you're saying this, it, I find it interesting about myself in that I am an interior designer and I don't really have a home.
Uh,
So, so, and I think we've touched on this before, but like for someone who moves around a lot like I do, or like who lives in spaces for, you know, short stints at a time, how, like, how do you, if you're in a space that's already been designed, what are some simple things that one could do, like, you know, to impact their environment so that it aligns with our desires when it's not our home, you know?
yeah. I mean, on a really like basic level is you're wanting to capture the attention of your subconscious mind. And at first, when we do something in our space, we notice it consciously. But then after we've been there for a while, we don't notice it consciously. It's just part of, you know, just part of the norm, but it's still communicating with our subconscious. And so like one example of this is like when we hang art, we see it, we notice it, but the more we're in the space, the less we notice it. But if it's cattywampus, right? If it's a little bit off level, we notice it immediately.
Yeah.
And so our mind is constantly paying attention to this. And so if we're in a space that, even if it's just like an Airbnb for a week, or
Mm-hmm.
if we're traveling, or if we're house sitting or caretaking or whatever, I think there are a few of the most important places. And that is first, like, how do you feel when you walk in the door, right? Because how we feel when we walk in the door is going to influence how we feel in the moments that follow. And the next is how we feel in the bedroom, because that's another important part of transition or place of transition, like our front door is that when we wake up and when we go to sleep, what do we see? Like what's infusing how we start our day and what's infusing how we drift off to sleep. And so those, like, no matter where you are, I would bring awareness to those things. And, you know, if there's a picture on the wall and you can't stand it, like, as long as it's not like permanently put there, like, just take it off carefully so it doesn't break. And, you know, it could be as simple as getting a little note and writing something to yourself just to catch the attention and direct the subconscious or your own conscious awareness in a certain direction.
Yeah.
And then like doing things with intention. So let's say that you're traveling, and when you go to the market, grab some fresh flowers and put them next to the front door and put an intention with it, so that when you walk in that door, you're reminded of whatever that intention or whatever it is that you want to bring your awareness to.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, I guess intuitively I've created my own practices, and you know, I've got aging parents, so I go visit them and spend the night quite often, and it's not my environment, it's not my home, but I do bring, you know, my own little like satchel of, you know, articles. It's like my travel altar that I, you know, I'll put in the nightstand next to me, and you know, maybe light a candle before I go to bed and set it, do my gratitudes and that kind of thing. And these are little routines that really ground me and you know, make me feel at home within myself. But yeah, I love the idea of, you know, of flowers at the entry and setting an intention of that with that. And yeah, just doing what you can to alter the environment without, you know, permanently, without getting fees tacked on.
Yeah, totally. And I think, like like you said, like having something that reflects us, even if it's our favorite pen in our journal, like you
Yeah.
said, having that next to the bed or having it in the living room. I think the most important thing is to recognize that every item in our environment is communicating something to us. And this happens like on a broad level, like a primal level, and it happens on a universal level. But what's most important is our personal level. And so we each have our individual story. And so you and I could occupy the same space or the same, you know, Airbnb or whatever, and we're going to have different experiences of it. And I think this is one of the reasons why people comment about like how their awareness has changed or how their level of consciousness has changed, because we're just opening up this whole world that has sort of been dormant. Like we're just opening up our awareness that, oh my gosh, no wonder that bothers me. Like no wonder that, you know, window that's so high bothers me, because I feel like trapped in the room, like I can't see or I can't get out. You know, there's all of these sensorial cues that either relate to us as human beings who all share a similar neurological system, or it triggers something from a long time ago that might be hidden in the recesses of our minds. But once we bring our awareness and curiosity to it and our intention to move toward what we want, then all of a sudden, like these layers start getting exposed in a good way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know. I think we could like talk about this forever. Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, because I'm in my sister's space, and they had their floors redone, and for a long period of time didn't put any rugs down. And there's this feeling of like just everything just felt like it was floating in this like big vast space. And then finally they put a rug down. It made such a difference, just in that, not just like visually that it anchored the space, but also like the having this tactile piece under your feet, and just there was an element of softness that came with it, and all of that. I mean, it's so fascinating how just one shift, one little thing that we do in our spaces could impact, make such a big impact. And that's the part about leaning into this approach that feels so much better to me than just being an ultra consumer and needing to buy new things, buy new things, buy new things. I love the nuances of how we can change our designs really with what we already have, just like little tweaks, rearrangements, things like that. And just by noticing, like you said.
Yeah, and having that intention. And I think like intention and awareness and like curiosity, right? Because we have the things in our home for a reason. Like we were attracted to it or we called it in for a reason. And a lot of times it's just a matter of like reorienting the space so that it's like going to the chiropractor, right? And getting our body in alignment. It's like getting our space in alignment. And I also find like when you don't buy anything, it almost like it taps into this deeper creativity. Like, I don't know, when you've had clients who just want you to work with their space versus buying new things for the space, like what's more fun for you?
Oh, I mean, definitely going deep with them, and yeah, I mean, sure, shopping is fun and sourcing is fun, but for me, it means so much more to help the client reflect themselves in their home, and just and doing that process. Um, it's a lot more intimate. It's a lot more. There requires like a bit more trust and vulnerability on the part of the client. Um, but I think a lot of people are ready for that too.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that that depth of connection. And I think that's one thing that, and I'll be curious if this has happened to you, like in working with clients, do you feel like there's like this depth of like intimacy and a layer of vulnerability that happens like versus like maybe in the beginning when you weren't doing that type of design?
Oh yeah, yeah, and I notice it more with my repeat clients because I have clients I've had a relationship for years with, you know, where I've started with one room and then 2 years later they ask for another room and I think without me saying overtly, you know, now I'm practicing holistic interior design. This is the way it works, and you know, whatever. It just kind of is woven into the process, um, and I think that what comes out, you know, of the result is just a much more like intentional, focused, soulful space. Like there's a level of participation in the client that wasn't really there before. It's very subtle, but it happens. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and this is another question, like I feel like with this type of work it's more empowering. Like we're sort of like, you know, when people hire us, they're giving us authority of their most intimate like space in their life. And I feel like in this way we're sort of like turning the authority back on them,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a level of like ownership, or I don't know, there's just a
Like agency.
that's the word. Yeah. And I think in the end that must feel much better to be in a space that you've curated and cultivated instead of, you know, an outsider, because your home is such an intimate
Yeah,
place, you know.
it is.
Yeah.
You're right. It is co-curation,
Yeah,
right? Like
exactly.
like a collaborative a collaborative effort. So if someone reached out to you and was like, "Hey, uh I'm going to be out of town for 6 months. I'd love for you to redo my space and I don't want to be bothered with any of it." Would you do it?
That's such a trick question. I mean, I guess I mean, I will not turn down a project that is, you know, I guess it depends on the client, it depends on the location, and how open they are to changing things up. I mean, I think I would do it if I had, you know, we have a really good questionnaire and intake process of really trying to get to know the client.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so if I felt like I had that basis, I'd give it a go. Yeah. But
Yeah.
you know, it's the more rewarding projects are the ones that I can where I can work alongside with the client, and it's just it's a journey, right? It's not just like about the end goal. It's about what's happening along the way.
Yeah, because it's like it participates in how we evolve, right? So it's like this, it truly is an evolution. And I think I've got my dog and I've got chickens and roosters out the window. Sorry for the noise. Um, I think that like if we're doing our life right, and if we're listening to our inner, if we're following like our desires, I think that like our house is going to evolve with us, right? Like just as like if we all of a sudden become aware of like a certain like nutritional like thing that works for us, like we're like it's sort of like a process of refining, and the space that served us when we were 25 is definitely not going to serve us when we're 45.
Now,
You know, the place that serves us now might not be the same space that serves us 15 years from now. Like it is a part of how we evolve, and that I think that makes it really fun.
yeah, and such a special um, expression, like such a special journey. I love it too. I think it's fun too. Um, okay, well, I think we'll probably just cap it at this, but I'm sure we'll have other conversations like this. And thanks, Kimberly, for hopping on. And if anyone's interested in learning more about the School of Holistic Interior Design, please do follow Kimberly and dive into her newsletters. And your posts are always so they really hit their messaging is it really hits on a very human level and allows us to connect clearly with space and self. So thank you so much for being on.
Yes, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, and I'll look forward to our next conversation.
Okay. All right. Stay cool.
Okay.
Okay.
See you. Bye. Bye.